Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer Reaction Part 2. Guys, this is quite the reaction for me. I just did all my homework, and let me tell you, it's always disappointing when you find somebody that you think could do better and they do worse, right? When it's a person that's not that smart, you go, well, it is what it is. When it's somebody that you thought was a lot smarter, it's very disappointing. And that's the case with Karl Jobst here. He's a great presenter, right? But that doesn't translate into having great intelligence. And you can have great intelligence and lack complete wisdom, right? And what you're looking at here is a combination of what, in my opinion, right, is just a huge ego and immaturity, and I'm going to lay out the case. And guys, this is just a learning experience, and I hope it is for you younger viewers, right? I'm an old man. I've been around the road. I've taken my defeats. I was young once and arrogant once, and my mom used to have a great saying, and she still does, right? And it's this: if you don't humble yourself, the world will humble you. That's where Karl is at right now. Let me tell you, this is not a good idea what he did, right? If he was going to shoot this video, he really needs to be on camera, right? Because if you're going to say something and be apologetic towards the public and take ownership of the things that you did, you really need to look into the camera and say it with your chest, right? Like you said it when you were talking smack on Camelot, right? Have the same energy, have the same set of balls to say it to the public when you lose. This is what's disappointing about this, right? For his public, right? For the people that support him. I think they deserve better than to be hiding behind Minecraft, right? And making all these excuses. Karl's a talented presenter. No question about that, right? But his ego makes DSP look humble. It really does. And as many of you have pointed out, DSP hasn't lost, over $1 million Australian dollars, and it's about 638K American, right? That's a lot of money. For those of you who haven't figured it out, because a lot of people are just coming into the story, he spent $600,000 on his lawyers, which is insane, absolutely insane. At some point, he should have said, well, what's going on here, right? At some point, you have to decide to pick up the phone. Then on top of that, the judge hits him with $350K plus interest, which is another 394, right? So we're at 694, rounding it off. And then Billy Mitchell's attorney's fees, which is, lowball is going to be $200,000. If he spent $600,000, we can more or less guarantee it's at least $200,000. That's over $1 million. It's absolutely insane. And over what? Over pride. I mean, that's really what it is. Can somebody tell me a good reason why he would put this video out in the middle of negotiations? I mean, this is utter stupidity, right? And I thought he said that his lawyers okayed this. Well, and he's like, I'm thinking of appealing. I mean, any settlement that they would propose in negotiation right now would include, not going to appeal the case, right? They can offer him a better deal. But this guy's got to be a very difficult client, man. Let me tell you, doing this during this time is absolutely idiotic, in my opinion. And I'm not a lawyer. You should get professional advice. He should listen to professional advice, but of course he doesn't. In my part 1, I showed you how this guy is. He's still trying to litigate the case with the same ideas that don't work, with his interpretations of the law. He's not a lawyer, and he did absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. He could have showed up with nobody, like I told you before, and had the same result. It wouldn't have made a lick of difference. Okay. But again, I don't mean to crap on the guy, but it should be a learning experience for everybody. And it's hard to be impartial when somebody keeps doing stupid things like this, and just he's handing Billy win after win, and he's taking L after L. Billy doesn't have to do anything. He's doing it to himself. Don't you think Billy and his lawyer already recorded all this stuff? They're cutting it up. They're getting a presentation ready for the judge so the judge can know exactly how he feels, right? How Jobs Korea feels over there on his Discord, because you know they have all that stuff, right? So he's in the weakest position possible to negotiate, and on top of that, he does this. I mean, at some point you just got to say, this guy is stupid, right? Because you have ego and immaturity here. And, the part that I chastise him for is not that he wants to do this personally, right? If he was on his own and didn't have a family, hey, do it. It's entertaining. We can sit here and talk about it, shoot the breeze and just clown on him, right? Milk him till he's dry. The unfortunate part here is that he's got a family, right? And he's, like I said, he's just handing the victory to Billy. Billy doesn't have to do anything. Shooting fish in a bucket. Hot L after hot L after hot L. Billy is just serving him because this guy is begging for it. Oh, man, look. And he's trying to impress who? The internet. I mean, that's the sad part. This man has to have a lack of maturity that I can't even comprehend. Let me tell you, if my family was going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if I didn't close my channel or if I didn't shut up, I enjoy talking to you all, but you're not worth $100,000. You're not. I'm shutting it down. He can't do that. This guy cannot shut his mouth for anything. So let's keep it going here.
They adjusted the settlement, and in the final version there was no money transferred. As soon as I received this email, I removed my claim from my video, and it has been gone ever since. After I removed the claim from my video, we responded to Billy's lawyers advising them that the segment was removed and that I would be issuing a retraction. Billy said this was not sufficient, and in the response from Billy's lawyer, they stated that proceedings were necessary. Despite this, I still planned on releasing a retraction, and in my video, The Greatest Feat in Video Game History, I included this segment at the...
Okay, couple of things here. They're negotiating with you. Just because they say we still have to do a litigation doesn't mean that. If you let your lawyer handle things instead of you, maybe you could work it out. Number two, this is not a retraction. Stop calling it a retraction, right? The judge already told you this is not a retraction. It's not enough, right? This mind yoga that you're doing, saying, well, I made it so it could get a lot more views. Yeah, but it's 45 seconds, 48 seconds, whatever the hell it was, in a 30-minute video that doesn't have Billy Mitchell anywhere. I don't think you have to be a lawyer to understand this. This is not a retraction apology video in any way. You did 45 seconds of this, and the only reason this is a retraction is because you're saying it's it. Nobody else thinks that, okay? And those of you who are telling them that this is a retraction video, you guys are full of shit too, right? This is not. This hurt him, right? This definitely was not run by any lawyer, right? He doesn't know the law. This guy couldn't tell the law between the tail and his ass. I mean, this guy doesn't know a damn thing about the law. He's a perfect example of what not to do. And he makes these assertions. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like... You got to keep this guy away from the internet, if he's doing anything other than, speed running content. Don't let him talk about the law. It's like an alcoholic. You got to keep him away from the bottle. This is insanity. It's frustrating because he appears to be a very smart person, but he does very stupid things. All right, let's continue.
End. Now, before I finish the video, I would like to take this opportunity to correct something that I said in a previous video. Back in May, I talked about the new lawsuits filed by Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell. In that video, I made the claim that Apollo Legend paid money to Billy Mitchell as part of their settlement. I would never make such a claim unless I had very good evidence to support my position. In response to this, Billy Mitchell released a video accusing me of lying and claimed that no money was exchanged. He didn't provide any evidence to back up this claim, nor did he attempt to get in contact with me to clear up any misinformation I may have had. However,
Okay. Look at his reasoning here. Billy didn't attempt to contact him, right? Guys, for a second, let's forget it's Billy, okay? Just forget that it's these two people. If you have one person that says something wrong, and you're putting the onus on the other person to correct you, right? When you're saying that you had very good references and you didn't. You had text, right? You had a Reddit story, right? But you didn't have the lawsuits in front of you. You should have had the agreement in front of you so you can say these kind of things, right? Obviously an error, but the fact that you're still arguing this point now is insane because it's already ruled upon that it wasn't. This is the problem with this guy. He thinks he knows the law. Like, oh, look, I did everything correct. I did nothing wrong. This is DSP reasoning. No, this has been litigated already, buddy. This is not it. The way you're saying this is absolutely wrong. And, at this point, really batshit crazy because you lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And everybody's recording this. It's just sad, man.
I did investigate further as I would never want to provide false information to my viewers. I reached out to a member of Apollo's family who graciously agreed to clarify some details. According to them, despite Mitchell's best efforts, Apollo Legend would not pay any money, and in the final version of the settlement, there was no clause indicating that he was required to do so. Therefore, the statement I made in that video was almost certainly incorrect. I sincerely apologize for providing...
Almost certainly incorrect. No. It's 100% incorrect. In a court of law, that's about as incorrect as it gets. Jeez.
Information. And no matter what kind of relationship I have with Mitchell, I do not believe that it is ever justified to lie or mislead. Mitchell also claimed that I was accusing him of murder. This is certainly not the case. I do have my opinion regarding the impact of the settlement on Apollo's decision, but ultimately, it was no one's responsibility but his own. The only reason I mentioned it in that video was because I felt like it was important to let you know what happened, as I know many of you enjoyed his videos. My standard of evidence has changed dramatically since I made this original claim, so of course, now I disagree with my statement that I had very good evidence. But
good. Why'd you put it on the video?
Just trying to say that I didn't just make this up out of nowhere, and I didn't consider Billy's legal threat against me as him trying to get in contact with me, which is why I said that he didn't.
Again, making legal decisions, jeez. Should have asked your lawyer before you decided that.
At least my retraction, my lawyers contacted Billy's lawyer to let them know, though we never heard back. I've heard a lot of people say that I never made a retraction or never attempted to correct the record or was trying to hide my retraction.
That's absolutely correct. It's not many people. It's a judge that said that, right? People agreed with the judge, right? So everybody in the planet has the same opinion except for you, right? You lose a court case and you think you're still right. This is what I'm talking about. This ego, jeez. Oh, man.
And that if only I had just made a retraction, this entire thing would have been avoided. But that's just not the case. I wanted the retraction to get as many views as possible. I even said as much to my lawyers at the time. And ultimately, it did. My retraction got far more views than the original video.
It's not a retraction. Stop lying to yourself. I need somebody, right? I need one of the lawyers to just go up to him and just smack the crap out of him. Smack some sense into this man.
But it was clear from Billy, even before I made the retraction, that it wasn't going to affect his actions in any way. Then, in September 2021...
How is it clear if you never called him? How is it clear if you never talked to the man? I don't know.
Billy filed his lawsuit against me. Those are the events that led up to the lawsuit. But if the lawsuit was apparently just about my claim about the Apollo Legend settlement, then why did many people believe that it was about allegations of cheating? There are multiple reasons, and yes, I am one of them, but it wasn't just my YouTube audience who thought that. It was even news...
Here we go.
outlets. In fact, they were playing segments on national news about how Billy was suing me for cheating.
A bitter war of Donkey Kong has exploded, with controversy over a high score making it all the way to a Queensland courtroom. An American video game champion is suing a Brisbane YouTuber.
You know, you have to be super, and I mean super duper, crystal clear with your audience if you're asking for money, right? And if the press is running with an erroneous story, how come you didn't make a video to correct everybody? That would have been, something really simple to do. Hey guys, this lawsuit is not about what they're saying here. There's other things. You could have done 100 things to mitigate this. But now you're saying it's the, in addition to you, right? You hold a little bit. You're only 30% guilty, right? We're going to put another 30% on the audience because the other 30% belongs to the press for misinterpreting your lawsuit. Okay.
The cheating claims.
And they didn't think that because I told them or because they watch my videos. They ran that story because of the arguments that were being made during the lawsuit and the nature of the pleadings. In Australian defamation, you must look at the entire publication. If I publish a video, Billy doesn't get to just...
Why are you still giving legal opinions, right? In Australian law, you are the least qualified person to be making legal arguments. I don't know anything about the law. I am not a lawyer. I know and accept that. That's why when I need legal help, I call a lawyer and I listen to them, unlike you. And I don't go on the internet making legal claims about a case that I just lost, right? This is your point of view. This was your defense, and it isn't worth jack squat. And you're still making it here, and this is more evidence that they're going to clip for your appeal.
A single paragraph and ignore everything else. In the video where I made those claims about the Apollo settlement, I also claimed that Billy was exposed for cheating. I claimed that he was banned for cheating. I said that he abuses the legal system to force people to acknowledge his video game scores. And I said that he expressed joy at the thought of Apollo Legend's death, because he did. I mean, I even showed in that same video text messages where Billy said he would try his hardest not to smile and giggle if Apollo Legend was actually dead. So as part of Australian defamation law, there is a concept known as contextual truth. And this was one of my defenses. My defense states that because I made those other claims that both hurt Billy's reputation and were true, Billy was harmed anyway, and the words he complained of didn't harm him any more than he otherwise would have been. And in response to these other claims, Billy denied them all. He denied that he...
Look, it's hard to have a client like this. I have to imagine, because he knows the law better than you. Look at the argument he just made here, right? The text message is about Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell said there was just dark humor, bad jokes, whatever. All right. Let's just take it at face value. Let's say that after he died, Billy Mitchell was not sad, right? Or happy or whatever. That doesn't mean that he contributed to the death, which is what you tried to imply in that video. Right? That there could be 100 people that die tomorrow and people could be happy about it. Doesn't mean they contributed to that. That wasn't the case. You're over here saying all these other things when the only thing that really happened here is you misspoke. You should have apologized, right? You didn't do the right thing. You didn't want to bend the knee to somebody that you hated, and you clearly hate Billy Mitchell. I mean, this is just not a regular dislike. And I'm not saying that he's the greatest person in the world. We're just talking about laws, right? And it's hard to defend when he put on in there. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have brought it up, but you giving it the weight it has doesn't mean that that's a law. I don't know the law. You don't know the law. You know who knows the law? Lawyers. You know who knows the law? Judges. And they decided on this. Right? And you're still going back to the same old thing. I hope you're not trying to take this to appeals, because, again, you're just going to, hand over the case to Billy, and he's going to hand you L after L after L. He's going to say, yeah, what? So I said it. But that doesn't mean I did what you said I did. Right? I didn't pay him any money. You said he paid him money. And because he paid, he had to pay money. He had to get more jobs. And because he had to get more jobs, he couldn't handle it anymore. And then he did what he did, right? This guy could be the biggest scum of the earth. And what you said still wasn't true. And that is the gist of the case. But you should not be arguing this. It should be your lawyers. You should be looking into the camera, regardless of how scummy everybody else on the planet is, and try to do what's best for your family. Again, I'm not saying that you're morally incorrect, right? Billy Mitchell could be morally bankrupt, and that has nothing to do with the well-being of your family. You have to do whatever it takes to protect them, even if it means eating crow. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to know. This paragraph that you put up here is absolutely disgusting, and still you lost in court, and that doesn't mean you can keep bringing it up and relitigating the case in the public so you can give the opposition counsel more ammunition, because you're basically, the whole gist of your argument is, the judge doesn't know what he's doing. Well, they still hold your fate in your hands, dude. Pissing them off is not the best thing to do.
Exposed for cheating, he denied that he was banned by Twin Galaxies, he denied that he abuses the legal system, and he denied that he expressed joy at the thought of Apollo Legends' death. And because he denied those extra claims, the breadth of argument during the lawsuit expanded to include those as well. And the media evidently latched onto the cheating claims, because Billy was denying those, and that was his main reputation. So on one hand, the reason Billy originally sued me was because of Apollo Legend, but on the other hand, because he doesn't get to just isolate that one paragraph and ignore everything else in the video, the cheating allegations, along with other more serious claims, became involved. And
he doesn't get to do what? Based on your legal opinion? He can do whatever he wants. You don't know anything about the law. This is like self-comforting, like, oh, he doesn't get to do that, but, they let him do that. And I still, geez.
the judge did agree that those other claims were made and that they were substantially true, though in his opinion, they weren't more serious than the claim Billy was suing over, which I personally don't agree with. In my personal opinion, I think expressing joy over Apollo Legends' death is far worse than any implication that the eventual settlement of Billy's $1 million lawsuit.
In your opinion, right? In my opinion too, right? We both can agree that that's absolutely scummy. And you know what? It doesn't mean squat. It doesn't mean squat in your case. That's what the court decided. And the problem is that it looks like you take a hold of the defense, like you're in charge of this stuff, and you have like the worst instinct when it comes to the law because you're just a layperson. You're not a real reporter, and you're not a lawyer. Let your lawyers do the lawyering. And when they're lawyering, if you don't like what they say, pucker up, buttercup. Let them do their job. It's got to be frustrating having like a guy like this for a client. Well, I feel, screw what you feel. You need to win. You need to win. And in order for you to win, you need to shut your pie hole.
Against a young YouTuber who had major health issues and no money and who was just expressing the truth might have contributed in some way to his decision to end his life. After Billy filed his lawsuit, I released a video in September 2021 titled I'm Being Sued and Cancelled, where I announced that I was officially being sued. In that video, I specifically state that I'm not going to talk about what the lawsuit was about. Normally, I'd give you a full breakdown of this kind of thing, but because this one involves me, I'm going to keep my cards a lot closer to my chest.
This is where you get into murky waters because you don't have to get into anything. Those are public records. Anybody can see them. You can just say, I'm being sued. You can direct it to there. You don't have to talk about it. You need to show people publicly what it is, especially because you asked for money. This is the criticism. And again, every one of his decisions are absolute, right? Did he ask his lawyers? No, he's just putting out videos, opening his mouth, burying himself even bigger, L after L after L, and Billy's just cooking, serving them one right after the other.
tell you is that I am being sued for defamation, and the amount of damages being sought is $450,000. I will definitely be giving you updates as we go, but I don't want to give out too many details or strategies before I use them in court. After this, I didn't talk about my lawsuit at all for over a year, and during this time, news outlets were posting articles about how Billy was suing me for cheating. Again, this wasn't because I said this. I wasn't even talking about my lawsuit at all. These articles were being written because reporters were reading the court documents where these issues were being argued, and I wasn't going to go out of my way to draw attention away from the cheating allegations either. Part of my defense was that Billy, more than anything else, has a reputation as a cheater. And when you think about Billy Mitchell, people don't think about that one brief claim I made in a video in 2021 and then retracted. They just associate him with cheating and abusing the legal system. The fact that so many people didn't even know about the Apollo Legend settlement claim is evidence of that. Then, in 2022, Billy sent me a third concerns notice because of a video I released in April regarding one of Billy's witnesses accusing him of extortion. And he followed that up with another lawsuit, of which he sent to my lawyers and told them he was going to file it against me. And then he sent me a fourth concerns notice, saying he intended to sue me because I put a 10-second AVGN meme in a video completely unrelated to Billy.
So you know the difference between concern notices and lawsuits, right?
He was now threatening me with 3 simultaneous lawsuits. The first one had already cost $200,000 in the first year alone. So if Billy filed the second and third lawsuits, there was no way I could afford to defend myself. I had Billy Mitchell, the guy who had already sued multiple people for exposing his cheating and who had already sued me once before, telling me he was going to sue me 2 more times. And because of what you said, this would have made you even more excited. Remember how excited you were to get sued? Remember all the smack talk you were talking? You think that you'd be doubly, triply, a quadruple excitement from all these, threatened lawsuits, which are only notices of concern. And of course, it's a legal tactic because you should have been negotiating. I'm sure the lawyers told him that, but he doesn't want to bend the knee. He doesn't want to negotiate like Apollo did. He doesn't want to do any of those things, right? He wants to be victorious. He gambled. You absolutely gambled, champ. You did. And you lost big, real big. Reasons were insane. They were obvious abuses of the legal system. I felt I had no choice but to create a GoFundMe, and
obvious abuses of the legal system. If there were abuses, they wouldn't let people do them. Right? They're legal in your country, so obviously there were not abuses. You didn't have to start, a GoFundMe. What you could have done is picked up the phone, which costs about $1.50. Let's say it costs $5. Hey, Billy, how can we resolve this? I know you didn't like that part about the Apollo legend. Probably shouldn't have said it. I'm still going to call you a cheater, but what do you want me to do? Let's talk, right? And then you can sit down and say, well, Billy's going to, we're good on the cheating. He's going to accept the cheating. So we're going to win on that. And I'm going to, resolve this thing with Apollo legend. And you could have separated right there. You could have done that. You knew better than everybody else. Why didn't you make a video saying these are 2 different things? Why wasn't it really clear on this GoFundMe what you were being sued for? Why did you highlight so much the cheating? I mean, this is an absolute realistic argument, logical argument that people that donated to you have. They feel like you hit it on purpose, because if they would have known that this was for Apollo legend, they wouldn't have given you money, buddy. That is the sad reality, right? And you can make all the excuses you want, but it looks terrible because at no point you're blaming the press, you're blaming the people themselves when it's you that didn't address it directly.
It in a video called Billy Mitchell Has Gone Insane and I Need Your Help. In that video, I clearly explain what is happening and why I'm creating the GoFundMe. Every single word I said in that video was true, and all of this is explained in the video. I understand that this was several years ago, so I don't blame anyone for not remembering the video or why I created the GoFundMe. But it wasn't in response to the first lawsuit that ultimately went to trial. It was because of Billy's constant legal threats against me, most of them having nothing to do with Apollo legend. This video got a lot of attention.
You could have said that on that GoFundMe document, and absolutely nobody would have blamed you. Everybody would still giving you the same amount of money, right? And that's why they're questioning why you didn't say anything.
The time. Even Moist Critical made a video about it.
This is one of the most baffling reasons for a lawsuit I think I've probably ever heard in general. Now, as I understand it, the second law...
This is one of the most ridiculous things ever. Okay, this is where YouTube rots people's brain. Even Moist Critical. Is Moist Critical a frickin' lawyer? No, he's just another idiot on the internet. Right? His legal opinions are no better than anybody else's. Right? It's just entertainment. He's another good creator. Entertaining, great. But if you're going to rely on him for legal advice, you're insane. Anybody's insane. Just because YouTubers agree with you, you think that's going to save you in court? That's not real life. That's the problem with people. They think YouTube is real life, right? On YouTube, you can go on here, you can pretend that you're a reporter, right? How's that working out? You can pretend that you know about the law. You can pretend that you know more than lawyers and more than judges. How's that going? Over negative 1 million Australian dollars, negative $632,000. This is insane, right? It should be you on this camera being contrite and apologetic and leaving all this crap behind and listening to your lawyers. I'm trying to, just say some common sense things here so nobody actually believes the insanity that he's putting out. And this is to help them, because obviously nobody's telling them this stuff, right? Just common sense stuff. Nobody's telling them that.
It hasn't been fully filed yet. Right now, it is still in the letter of intent stage, where they are intending to sue Karl and have sent him the documents to indicate such. But it looks like it is going to be sent in the coming days.
And the GoFundMe raised 150,000 Australian dollars immediately. If anyone came away from that video thinking that Billy was suing me for saying he cheated, it's because he had started the process for doing exactly that, on top of everything else. Ultimately, these extra actions never made it all the way to trial, but there was no way for me to know that at the time.
That's fine, but you had all the time to clarify it, even after you closed down the GoFundMe, right? I even made a video where I highlighted, look, these are the concern letters. Here's where the cheating's at. He didn't lie to you. The problem isn't that cheating wasn't part of his allegations. The problem is that once you knew that they weren't anymore, you still didn't clarify it. You still didn't correct anybody. You still went with the same narrative.
Possibly even because of the success of the GoFundMe, that Billy ended up backing down. People are now using the fact that Billy didn't go all the way through with his threats to say that the GoFundMe was a scam. But I was just responding to actions taken by Billy and protecting myself. And the money was used exactly for the purposes that I said it would be, which was to help cover legal fees. This narrative that this whole thing was only ever about Apollo Legend, which ironically is a narrative that started with Billy Mitchell, is completely false. And if that were the case, Billy would not have taken action against me on 4 separate occasions, with 3 of those having nothing to do with Apollo Legend. That is why I never thought this whole thing was actually about Apollo Legend. I had been threatened and was dealing with so many actions from Billy that were related to cheating that from my perspective, this Apollo Legend lawsuit was just Billy trying to capitalize on a mistake I made. But
look, guys, this is where his naivete is just showing, right? All these concern letters are tactics by lawyers, which should have been handled by lawyers. But you see how emotional he got, all these concern letters. Then he said before that he didn't care about them. Now they're a big deal, right? I mean, I remember you saying in this same video that you just didn't care about them. Like you didn't pay attention, you didn't take it seriously, I believe is what you said. And now you're saying that all of them are really concerning. They should have been concerning, as I told you. But it's your lawyer that should be making these decisions, not you. You're making all these decisions over there in Jobst Korea, not taking legal advice, right? Not doing what your lawyer says, which is shut your pie hole, and you're making all these decisions on your own, all the wrong decisions on your own, right? That's why you listen to lawyers, guys. That's why you hire them. That's why you need to listen to professional help, so you don't end up like this chump over here.
Wrong or right, I was under the impression that Billy was suing me because they kept talking about his cheating and talking about him in a negative light in general. Otherwise, those other actions made no sense whatsoever. It was clear to me that his goal was just to silence me, especially when it came to the Apollo Legend claim, as I had already removed the words and made a retraction.
It was clear to you that his goal was just to silence you. You could be right and you could be wrong. But a real good way to clarify all this before you spent all these hundreds of thousands of dollars, before you did all this crap, would be to pick up the phone, talk to Keemstar, get Billy's number, have, mutual friends as references, and just hash it out right there. But you wanted to be a big boy, right? You wanted to be popular. You wanted to chase the views. You got YouTube brain. You got YouTube muscles. And you didn't want to end up attacked like Apollo was when he settled, right? That's really what happened. I think everybody can agree to that. But you took it all the way down here, and it's just insane for somebody this talented to do this to their own career. Again, Billy is just cooking you because you don't do what you're supposed to do as a client.
The only other time I mentioned the GoFundMe was at the end of a video I released in August of 2023, where, ironically, I was responding to Billy saying that my GoFundMe was a scam. However, in this video, I allow Billy to fully explain why he is suing me, and I even say myself that the lawsuit relates to Apollo Legend.
Okay, but time went on, and eventually, without a single source, except a now deleted post on Reddit, was his only source, where he blamed me for taking the life of another human being and for what I did to him. And I said, that's it.
Billy Mitchell is referring to the YouTuber Apollo Legend, who tragically took his own life in December of 2020. I won't go into specifics about this particular point because it does relate to his ongoing lawsuit against me. Of course, I do pick apart a lot of Billy's lies, and I deny that I actually said Billy took Apollo Legend's life, because I didn't, but I wasn't trying to hide the fact that the lawsuit was related to Apollo Legend. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even made this video or say directly that it was. And of course, I do also say that the allegations of cheating are relevant, because they were being argued as well. After I promoted the GoFundMe in this video, it quickly reached $200,000, at which time I closed it and stopped accepting donations, which was almost a year before we went to trial. So throughout 2024, as I began talking about the trial more and more, the GoFundMe was already closed and I wasn't accepting money from the public.
That's fine, but you had all that time to correct the narrative, and you didn't. That's what people are criticizing you for. You had all that time, right, to correct it, and you didn't. Nobody's saying that you didn't use the money for what you're saying, because obviously you lost so big that you're going to have to, really pay a lot of money. But it's just that you weren't transparent. And that should be, a lesson for everybody. When you're asking for money from people, you have to be absolutely 100%
I've seen people point to the description of the GoFundMe and say that it didn't provide enough information or exact details about what the lawsuits and threats were about, and in that regard, I totally understand if people think that was bad practice or an issue. I can only apologize and say that I didn't give the description much thought. As I said, I only mentioned or linked to the GoFundMe in 2 videos outlining things in much more detail, which I assumed people had already watched. Though if I knew the description should have included everything, I would have absolutely no problem doing just that.
How didn't you know I should have? Guys, when you assume, right? You know what the old saying is? When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And that's exactly what happened to this guy. For that much money, you shouldn't be assuming anything. You should be talking to your lawyers.
The fact that so many people got upset or felt misled after the judge's decision and I lost the lawsuit came as a huge shock to me. There was a lot of reporting being done around the time of the trial, and no backlash occurred then, when it was also very clear what the trial was about. And I've had many people tell me they always knew exactly what the lawsuit was about and they don't feel misled. So it would be very easy for me just to claim that people are only upset because I lost and Billy won, which is not the outcome everyone wanted. But I don't think that's entirely true either. I never said that Billy Mitchell sued me for cheating, but I also did not repeat repeat or draw attention to the original claim that got me in trouble. Nor did I constantly remind people that the lawsuit related to Apollo Legend. Not because I was trying to scam anybody or mislead people, but because I believed it would have been detrimental to my case. I was very happy to talk publicly about Billy threatening to sue me for calling him a cheater, and go into detail about how much of a cheater he is, because all of that is true.
So this is what people have a problem with you, is that you decide to follow the lawyer's advice just in this. Everything else, you said screw it, right? But not talking about the Apollo, that's the one thing that you decided, well, I'm not going to talk about that, right? And that's what people are criticizing you for, because if you had, many people that gave you money are saying they would not have given you money. That's the issue here, right? And it's arbitrary. If you would have listened to your lawyers and just shut your pie hole about everything, you wouldn't be in trouble. You probably wouldn't even lost the case, because it's your mouth that lost this case. It's this guy's mouth going on, making videos, talking about the case, going on Camelot, and doing all those stuff that lost him the case. It's that easy. L after L after L, because he couldn't keep his mouth shut because he had YouTube muscles. It's frustrating. You know, it's like when you have a team that you're rooting for, and, you know, it's one thing to get beat, right? It's very hard to lose a game when you beat yourself. You know, and clearly Karl Jobst beat himself.
That he had threatened me multiple times for calling him a cheater, I was not afraid to continue making that claim. And I was happy to discuss his cheating, even when it related to my currently ongoing lawsuit, because it was one of my defenses. When it came to Apollo Legend, this was a different story. I made a claim that included information that was not true. I didn't accuse Billy of murdering Apollo or causing his death, so I don't think I should have lost the lawsuit, but at the end of the day, I said something that was not accurate, which I admitted to and corrected years ago. And I was never going to repeat it because the internet doesn't work like we want it to work. If I drew more attention to Billy's claims about what I said, more people would have repeated it, and it would have been used against me in court. For example, Billy's team crawled through thousands and thousands of comments on Too Moist critical videos about Billy Mitchell, which were released years after my video. They found a handful of comments that related to Apollo Legend, and then without any causal link, claimed that they were a direct result of my video. Even though there was no mention of me or my channel, and we don't know who these people are or why they are making these comments, the judge ruled that I'm responsible. Essentially, it didn't seem to matter if people may have come to this conclusion independently, and it didn't seem to matter if there was no evidence linking their conclusion to my original video. The blame for every single comment was entirely placed upon me. The judge even flat out stated that no comments of this nature were ever made before my video. And not only is this one of the reasons the damages might have been so high, but it seemed to be used as proof that every comment was because of my original video. But I disagree with this statement, as there...
You can disagree with a statement, but that's just an opinion. It's not a legal claim, right? And were all these people making video after video after video on Billy Mitchell? No, it's the amount of videos that you made. If you would have shut up, right? If you would have shut up, you could have said, look, they're making these things on their own, right? But you're the one who put out the video not once, but twice, and then kept making video after video after video and restating the claim in interviews and doing all this other crap, you know, all this stuff that came out in court. You know, you want to blame the judge. It's you, buddy. It's you.
Plenty of comments well before my video ever came out saying that Billy was responsible. So you can see how dangerous even mentioning Apollo Legend would have been. That was my reasoning for not repeatedly bringing up Apollo Legend. Though evidently my behavior of talking about the lawsuit so many times without reminding people explicitly what it was about led to many people being confused. And if you're one of those people, I sincerely apologize. I just hope that you can consider that it was not done intentionally to mislead you or for nefarious purposes. I also made the mistake of reposting news articles covering my lawsuit, because all of the reporting that was done before the trial focused on the cheating allegations, and that wasn't the full story. As I said before, I had so many threats regarding the cheating allegations that I believed Billy's true motivations were to shut me up about the cheating videos, and the lawsuit did actually involve Billy denying those cheating allegations ever happened.
This is a part of the video where he should be staring into the camera, apologizing to people, right? Because this right here feels like he's hiding. it doesn't make him look good. You have to man up, as we say, right? And if you're being accused by your own audience of this, right, they deserve the same respect that you showed them when you asked for the money, right? When you made these claims. The fact that you're hiding, that you hide on Discord, that you're hiding behind this Minecraft shots, I mean, it just looks terrible. It shows poor character, and it shows immaturity.
However, I should have made it more clear that the lawsuit wasn't mainly about cheating. I just didn't know how to do that without jeopardizing my defense. And I also carelessly assumed most people already knew what the lawsuit was about anyway, because I had said it in one of my videos. If I truly understood the impact my actions would later have on people, I would have been much more careful. Obviously, in hindsight, it may have been better to not talk about the lawsuit at all, but I'm not sure if that...
In hindsight, you think? You think following your lawyer's advice would have been a good thing? Right? All you had to do is do what your lawyer said. But what did you say? F lawyers. Man, what a hard lesson to learn, and in learning it in the worst way possible, right? In the worst way possible.
Ever going to happen. It's just not in my nature. And this was the biggest thing impacting my life and this channel for multiple years. So of course I felt compelled to talk about it. I should have just found a way to be more transparent if I were to discuss it. And I can understand fully if you are disappointed in my actions, especially if you donated to the GoFundMe. If you weren't really following the trial closely and don't have much information about what happened during it, and all you're currently reading is news about the judgment or drama videos saying that I lied about everything, I'd suggest remaining skeptical for the time being. I will wait until the dust settles before discussing what happened during trial in more detail. But at some point, I definitely will. And hopefully at that point, you will have a better understanding about why I was so confident I would win. And it's also possible that you might even agree that this judgment is simply crazy once you have all of the details. I will say one thing though. The judge found Billy Mitchell to be a credible witness.
This judgment was crazy. I'm sure that's what the appeal judge wants to hear, right? I'm sure that's... Jesus Christ. Did he say that he ran this by the lawyers? I have to be very skeptical based on this man's judgment, based on the maturity that he's showing. I don't believe that that's true, right? I think that this is something that he's just saying in order to make himself feel better and comfort himself. But this is not something that I could believe.
And essentially accepted his full oral testimony as fact, despite our many attempts to show that Billy is a liar. For example, we have Billy on video in 2023 during his Twin Galaxies deposition saying that the effect I've had on him is minimal.
Did the actions that Karl Jobst and David Race and Jeremy Young and Jeff Harris take also cause you emotional distress?
That is minimal compared to this.
Why?
Because this is where it all began.
However,
you're trying to say these are two different things. Right? It could be that the effect on him was minimal personally, but you failed to say that this guy showed up with receipts. What really killed you is that Billy Mitchell had receipts of shows that were canceled. Yes, some shows didn't cancel on him, but all he had to prove is that they did cancel because of your video, right? That's the damage. That is the damage. If you have the receipts, if you have an email from somebody saying we're not going to do this because of this, you're cooked. He could be happy as hell. He could be maybe it cost a little bit of stress, but that wasn't the question. The question is, did he lose money? He did.
In my trial, he claimed the exact opposite and said that I basically ruined his life. And the judge completely disregarded his previous statements and accepted what he said at my trial at face value. And this is just one example of many times that this happened. And if you've watched any of my videos on Billy Mitchell in the past, especially those in regards to his deposition, you will start to realize that this judgment might not be based on truthful evidence. But again, I won't go into my detail until...
Jesus. Gee. Not based on truthful evidence. I mean, how bad do you want to insult these judges? Are these judges just morons? Or could it be, right? Could it be that the evidence you brought had no bearing on the claims that were being made? Right? Billy Mitchell could have perjured himself 1,000 times about video game scores, and he could be a liar about that, and he could just be a liar in general about video game scores. And that's a very different thing in your country, right? Not in America, but in your country where you should be following your lawyer's advice. It can get you in hot water for saying that he's responsible in some way for the demise of another person. It's just this guy thinks he's a lawyer. I mean, you can't be everything. So you're a reporter, you're a journalist, and you're an expert litigant. The insanity of this is just insane. I mean, and you combine that with a huge ego and immaturity, Billy's just going to be handing you L after L after L after L. And right now he doesn't have the balls to pick up the phone. Jeez.
Very end. There are so many lies being spread right now that it's insane. I can totally understand people making fun of me because I lost and because of how cocky I was, and I can understand if people are upset because I wasn't transparent enough.
Now, I'm not making fun of you for any of those things. You're an idiot. I mean, I'm making fun of you because you're supposed to be a smart person and you're making very stupid decisions, right? And that's, you think that you know the law when you don't. You make legal claims. You're arguing legal issues on videos where the people that are going to be deciding your faith are looking at you, insulting their intelligence. It's just idiotic. People can just make fun of you for being an idiot. And like I said, it's disappointing because you would think that this guy would be really smart. And this is just basic crap. Layman people know this, right? When anybody would know, hey, I need to call a lawyer. I'm out of my depth here. Not this guy. This guy is here insulting judges because that's the smartest thing to do when you're in the middle of negotiations, trying to protect your family. What do? Talk shit. Jesus Christ.
And they had the wrong idea about the lawsuit. And I can appreciate people are angry because I lost. I made a ton of mistakes. And I am a great example of what not to do when you're being sued. And ultimately,
you think?
I am the one that will also need to pay the biggest price. In certain areas, I'm just an idiot, and I have a habit of saying things that rub people the wrong way. Of course, if I could go back and do things differently, I would. But some other...
Why don't you start right now? Why don't you start right now? It's not that they rub people the wrong way. It's that you're doing things against the law in your country, against liability laws in your country, right? It's that you do stupid things like insulting judges that you want to run appeals by.
Things people are saying about me are just crazy and appear to me to be completely in bad faith. Like people are...
They're not as crazy as what you're saying in your video, right? They might be making up stuff, but they didn't lose $1 million. They're not down over $600,000 American, right? Now that would be insane. You're making all these criticisms. You need to start looking in the mirror, buddy, or it's going to get even worse. We haven't even talked about Gerard. Because to me, and I'm no legal expert, right? That's why you should call lawyers. To me, Gerard has has a full load of ammunition ready to go on you because you love making declarative statements, right? It's insanity, guys.
Spreading this screenshot long after the trial had finished and using it to try and claim that I used AI in my defense or as part of my strategy, when all this is me and some friends having some fun and seeing what AI would say. Many people are taking advantage of the worst experience of my life to go after me for things that are just outrageous. And it sucks because on one hand I want to defend myself, but on the other hand I totally agree that I made a lot of mistakes. I said things publicly I shouldn't have said that made me look bad. So I do...
You think? And, one of those is being on Discord talking about the case. Why are they using those screenshots? Because you're on there knowing that there are people on there trying to, gas you up to keep on making stupid mistakes, and you're still on there because you need that fame. You need that YouTube cred, and it's costing you so much money. When YouTube costs you more money than you're making, maybe it's not a good business plan.
deserve to be called out for those things, but other things are just flat out wrong or just complete lies. And if I spend too much time debunking lies, it will come across as if I think I bear no responsibility for what happened, which is not the case. So I won't. I'll just say that I hope reasonable people can understand that out-of-context screenshots may not be indicative of what is really going on or how I really feel. This experience has been extremely painful. However, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's been a huge wake-up call, and there are many lessons for me to learn. So assuming I do adequate self-reflection and I grow from this, I think it will ultimately be good for this channel. I'm more motivated than ever to move on and focus on producing good content and keep...
This is the first reasonable thing I've heard him say. He has a talent for making content. He doesn't have a talent for the law. You should just stick to what you do best. And as much as you may hate Billy Mitchell, it's not worth your family. It's not worth your livelihood. It's not worth any of this. Hopefully this guy's going to learn not to be excited when he gets sued.
Myself out of trouble. So if you never really cared about this Billy Mitchell stuff and just want to watch some entertaining YouTube videos on cheating and speedrunning, this will be great news for you. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported me for the past few years. I can assure you that you have made this process much easier than it would have been, not only for me, but for my family as well. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I let down by not handling this as well as I could have. Thanks for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I do hope that I get to see you in the next video.
Well, let me tell you guys. It is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. I didn't see this playing out like this. I mean, I hope he moves on. I hope he grows from it. It's frustrating to see such a talented person waste away on this stuff. And, hopefully, he's able to get out of trouble. But who knows? I hope it's a lesson for everybody to learn. And this is a worse way of learning it. And unfortunately for him, he's still in the same mindset. I think he just handed Billy Mitchell more wins by making this video, by still, criticizing the court. And it's just terrible. If you're going to negotiate, this is not the way to go. I mean, I would say, when this started, Billy, show him some mercy. But, I mean, there's no point. There's no point. This guy needs to learn the rough way. And whatever Billy Mitchell does to him, it's within his right. Hopefully he learns a good lesson from this. But, who knows? We might be making content for years on this guy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.